What would you do if the person you loved most in this world humiliated you in front of everyone? What if you sacrificed your own dreams to build theirs, only to be mocked and discarded like you never mattered? I stayed quiet for too long. But when I found out the truth, everything changed. Let me tell you how I went from being invisible to unforgettable. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Helen Carter. I'm a widow, an artist, a grandmother. I've never had what you'd call a big life, and I never needed one. I lived quietly in my modest little home in Montpelier, Vermont. My days were filled with painting, the sound of the wind, and thoughts of the people I loved, mostly my granddaughter Madison. I raised her, really, more like a daughter. My own daughter, Lauren, had Madison so young, just 16. She was overwhelmed, working 2 jobs just to keep their heads above water. So Madison's early years were spent with me. I can still see her, finger painting in my kitchen, her little hands covered in bright colors, riding her tricycle up and down our cracked driveway, her laughter echoing. We'd pick dandelions, and she'd arrange them in jelly jars, proudly placing them by the window. She always called me Nana, not Grandma, not Granny, just Nana. When she was little, I felt like I was her whole world. Years flew by, as they always do. She grew up. The big, wide world started calling to her. iPads replaced the storybooks we used to read together, and social media took the place of those kitchen painting sessions. I just stood back, watching her life drift into something I barely recognized. I was proud, of course, but there was a quiet ache in my heart. Still, my love for her never wavered. It never stopped. And for 12 long years, I did something she never knew about. Every single month, I put aside whatever I could from my fixed income. Birthday money, savings from groceries. Sometimes I even skipped my own medications to build a college fund for her. It was our little secret, mine and the bank statements tucked away in an old folder. I knew she dreamed of going to CalArts, that big, shiny, expensive art school in California all the creative kids talked about. The tuition was insane, and living costs out there, even worse. But I believed in her dream, maybe even more than she did sometimes. Even though she'd stopped painting years ago, even though she never mentioned CalArts anymore, even though her visits became less frequent, usually only when she needed something. I still believed. For her 18th birthday, I wanted to give her more than just money. I wanted to give her a piece of her past, a reminder of who she used to be, of who we used to be. So I painted her a gift. It wasn't just a painting. It was a memory poured onto canvas. I spent weeks on it. Every brushstroke felt like a heartbeat. I painted the old swing in our backyard, the one she adored when she was 5, her little legs kicking with joy. I painted Max, our golden retriever who we lost when she was 10, his tail always wagging, and the daffodils, those bright yellow trumpets of spring that bloomed outside her window every April. A soft, watercolor sky watched over it all. I wrapped it so carefully in simple brown craft paper and tied it with a white satin ribbon. I slipped a little card inside that read, "May your future be as bright as the little girl you used to be." A smile touched my lips as I placed it gently in the back seat of my car. My heart was so full, so hopeful. I imagined her face lighting up when she opened it. I pictured her hugging me tight, maybe even a few happy tears. I imagined it all wrong. The party was nothing like the birthdays I used to throw for her, those backyard barbecues with a cake I'd baked from scratch, streamers hung with tape, and a whole lot of love. No, this was glossy. Lauren, her mother, had gone all out. There were white linen tables under a giant tent, a catered buffet, even a DJ. Madison had an entire table just for her gifts, stacked high with fancy boxes and shiny designer wrapping paper. Everything screamed money. Everything, except for me. I stood there in my old gray cardigan, clutching my carefully wrapped painting like it was made of spun glass. Honestly, no one really noticed I'd arrived, and that was okay. I wasn't there for them. Madison was wearing a tight pink dress and heels so high I'd have broken an ankle. She moved from table to table, her laughter loud, taking selfies, surrounded by friends who barely gave me a glance. Eventually, Lauren spotted me. She forced a polite smile. "Oh, you made it," she said, her tone making me feel like a distant cousin, not the woman who once changed her child's diapers. I handed her the gift, smiling gently. "Where should I—" "You can just put it with the others," she said, already turning away. But something inside me, a little nudge, told me to wait. I wanted to give it to Madison myself. I needed to. When she finally got around to opening her gifts, a crowd gathered, everyone with their phones out, recording. She tore through boxes, designer bags, cash cards, AirPods. Then she reached my gift. I saw her pause. My wrapping wasn't fancy, it was humble, handmade. "Oh, this one's from my Nana," she announced, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She unwrapped the paper, opened the box, and held up the painting. Silence. A heavy, uncomfortable silence. Then came the laugh. Not a happy laugh, a dismissive one. "Are you serious?" she said, holding it up almost like it was a joke, something to be ridiculed. "A painting? That's it? It must have been cheaper than buying a real gift." The kids around her snickered. I heard someone mutter, "Vintage vibes, I guess." Lauren shot me a quick, uncomfortable look but said nothing. My heart just shattered. I stood there, frozen. My hands felt heavy, useless at my sides. My chest tightened and it was hard to breathe. "It's sweet, I guess," Madison added with a shrug, propping the painting against a table leg like it was some forgotten decoration, an afterthought. And just like that, everyone moved on. No one saw my face. That's the thing about being invisible, isn't it? No one notices when you're in pain. I turned and walked back to my car. Each step felt like I was dragging years of memories behind me, years of birthday cakes I'd baked, often alone, years of scraped knees I'd kissed better, years of whispered prayers over bills, just so she could have ballet shoes or paint supplies or go to summer camp. I sat in the driver's seat, the door closed, the engine off. I didn't cry loudly, I didn't sob. I just stared at my hands on the steering wheel, watching as a single tear escaped, slid down my cheek, and landed right on my wedding band. It was a small, quiet splash, but it felt deafening. And in that moment, something crystallized within me. That painting, that piece of my heart on canvas, was the most honest thing I had to give. And she didn't see it. None of them did. Not really. But I would never forget. When I got home that night, I didn't even bother turning on the lights. I just walked into the kitchen, set my purse on the counter, and stood there in the dark. The silence of the house, usually a comfort, wrapped around me, but it felt different, heavier. No laughter, no music, no voices telling me to smile more. No one asking if I was okay. I opened the cupboard, took out a chipped teacup. One Madison had probably used 100 times, filled it with tap water, and sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where I used to help her with her homework, where she used to sit cross-legged, hair in a messy ponytail, asking me what colors to use in her drawings. My gaze drifted towards the painting corner. The easel stood bare. The table beside it, cluttered with brushes and dried-out tubes of paint, sat untouched since the day I'd finished her birthday gift. That painting. It took me weeks of aching wrists and blurred vision from concentrating so hard. Weeks of waking up in the middle of the night because I'd thought of one more tiny detail to add, one more touch to make it perfect for her. She called it cheap, and they all laughed. I stared down at my teacup, my reflection barely visible in the ripples of the water. Then, a new feeling began to stir, something hard and resolute beneath the pain. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and opened the drawer where I kept the folder. The one labeled College Fund Madison. It was a thick folder, stuffed with every document, every receipt, every printout from the savings account I'd painstakingly built over 12 long years. Every deposit, every transfer, every small, unseen sacrifice. I'd skipped new clothes for myself. I'd put off haircuts. I'd canceled cable. Every single time I put that money aside, I told myself, it'll be worth it. She's worth it. I turned on my old desktop computer, the one I barely used anymore. I logged into the online banking portal, typed in my password, the same one I'd used since the day I opened that account for Madison. The balance blinked on the screen. I stared at it for a long, long time. I knew exactly how much every single dollar in that account had cost me. Then I clicked transfer. Not to Madison, not to the college fund, to me, to my personal checking account. I watched as the progress bar moved slowly across the screen, almost as if it was waiting for me to change my mind. But I didn't. Not this time. Transfer complete. The balance now read 0. I closed the folder, shut the drawer, and turned off the computer. No one needed to know. Not yet. I wasn't doing it out of spite, not really. Not for revenge. It was something else. A quiet decision forged in a storm of humiliation. For the first time in my life, I chose me. Not my daughter, not my granddaughter, not the idea of what a good grandmother should be. Just me. I made a cup of tea then, the right way this time, warm with honey. I sat in the quiet, sipped slowly, and let the silence begin to heal a tiny, fractured piece of me. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt done. The next morning I shuffled into the kitchen, my slippers scuffing against the linoleum, and stared at the computer like it was some kind of ghost. Had last night really happened? I logged into my bank. The transfer was real. The money was in my name now, not hers. I thought I'd feel worse, a pang of guilt perhaps, but I didn't. There was just a strange, unfamiliar quiet in my chest. Not peace, not exactly, but more like the absence of chaos. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed. A text. "Hi, Nana. Can I stop by today? Miss you?" I stared at the screen for a long time. She hadn't called me Nana in months, maybe longer. I didn't answer right away. 2 hours later, there she was, Madison, standing on my porch with a tray of cookies from that expensive bakery downtown. The kind I could never afford but always admired in the window when we passed by. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup lighter than usual. Her smile seemed too bright, almost rehearsed. "Nana!" she chirped, wrapping her arms around me before I could even react. I stiffened. My body remembered the party, her voice echoing in front of her friends, her laughter stabbing like cold glass. But I let her hug me. She smelled of expensive shampoo and sugar. Nothing like childhood anymore. "I was just thinking about you," she said, walking into the kitchen like she used to when she was small, making herself at home. I wanted to apologize for the party. I was just overwhelmed. I didn't mean what I said. She sat at the table, folded her hands. Her nails were perfectly manicured. Her phone glowed softly in her lap. "I shouldn't have said that about the painting. It was really sweet of you. It's actually beautiful." I nodded slowly, trying to read the expression on her face. Was this real? Oh, how I wanted it to be real. "I missed you," she added, her voice softer now. "I know I haven't been around. Things just got busy, but I'm here now." She took my hand across the table. Her eyes shimmered, almost like tears. "I've been thinking a lot about college," she said quietly. "About Cal Arts. I know the fund is, complicated now. But I just want to be close to you again. I'm not here for the money, Nana. I swear. I miss us." The words wrapped around me like ivy, soft, familiar, and somehow dangerous. I felt something loosen in my chest. Maybe she was growing up. Maybe the shame at the party had awakened something inside her. Maybe I had been too harsh. After all, she was young, stupid. We've all been that. "I'll think about things," I told her gently. "But I'm glad you're here." She smiled. The big one. The same smile from when she was 7 and used to draw me pictures of rainbows and write, "I love you, Nana," in shaky crayon. We ate cookies. She stayed for dinner. She helped wash the dishes and even asked about my latest painting. She brought up a few childhood memories, the swing, Max, the daffodils. My heart, foolish thing that it is, began to believe again, to soften. Later that night, I opened the college fund folder again. I didn't transfer anything, but I thought about it. I thought about it more than I wanted to admit. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe she'd learned something. Or maybe I just wanted her love so badly, I was willing to be wrong. I didn't sleep well. Her voice kept replaying in my head. I'm not here for the money, Nana, I swear. And yet, the only thing louder than her words was the echo of that birthday party, that laugh, that cheap shot. But I pushed the doubt down, buried it deep, because sometimes you'd rather believe a lie that feels like love than accept a truth that leaves you utterly alone. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I found out the truth, the kind of gray, ordinary day where nothing feels important enough to really pay attention to. Cloudy, quiet. Madison had come over that morning, laptop in tow, all smiles. She said she needed help printing a scholarship form. I'd always been the techie of the family, even if now I could barely update my own phone. She left after lunch in a rush to meet friends. I stayed in the kitchen, washing the few dishes we'd used, humming a little tune from an old jazz record we both used to love. I remember thinking, maybe this is healing. Maybe we're really rebuilding something good here. Then I went into the study. Her laptop was still there, open, humming softly, the screen still glowing. I was just going to close it, click it shut, and send her a text to come get it, but the screen caught my eye. There was a chat window open, a messaging app I didn't recognize. At the top it read, Madison chatting with Emmy. My gut, that old, reliable instinct, told me to look away. But something deeper, something primal, something fiercely protective, told me to read. The last message hit me like a physical slap. Don't worry, she's totally falling for it. Been super sweet, cried a bit, told her I missed our bond. Classic emotional bait. She always melts with that family crap. My hands started to tremble. My breath caught in my throat. Another message blinked below it, fresh and ruthless. Just need a couple more visits. She's already thinking about putting the fund back. I know it, told you. She's predictable. I'll be in Cal Arts by fall. Manifesting it? I stared at the words. They weren't just cruel, they were calculated. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a careless slip of the tongue. This was a plan, a cold, deliberate plan. Everything, the visits, the hugs, the stories about Max and the daffodils, every Nana, I miss you, every tear, every cookie. It was all a script, written to manipulate me. I don't know how long I stood there, rooted to the spot. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. My legs finally carried me to the sofa, and I sat down slowly, the laptop still open on my lap, those damning words blaring like neon signs in my mind. Her voice, her sweetness, every Nana, I missed you, played in my head like a broken record, and every single one sounded faker now, more poisonous than the last. I felt cold, an icy chill spreading through me, like someone had turned off the sun. How did I not see it? How did I fall for it again? I looked at her messages, peppered with emojis and exclamation points, as if they weren't even written by the girl I raised. She sounded like a stranger. Worse, she sounded like a predator, targeting my emotions, manipulating my heart, using my love as a weapon. I wanted to scream, to shatter the silence with my rage, but I couldn't make a sound. Instead, I closed the laptop, slowly, gently, like shutting a casket. The grief was real, overwhelmingly so, but this time it wasn't grief for a person I'd lost. It was grief for a person who had never really existed. The version of Madison I held in my head, the sweet, curious child with paint on her cheeks, who once told me I was her best friend. That girl was gone. Maybe she'd been gone for longer than I ever realized. I sat in silence for the rest of the day, letting the awful truth sink in. This wasn't just disappointment. This was betrayal, and it wasn't accidental. It was intentional, methodical. Later that evening, I walked to my painting corner, the place where I used to feel such peace. I pulled the cloth off the canvas she had mocked at the party. There it was, our story in brushstrokes. The old swing, the faithful dog, the cheerful daffodils, and all I could see now, all I could hear, was her voice calling it cheap. But for me, it was never about price. It was about memory, about effort, about love. And I finally, truly understood something profound. She hadn't rejected the painting. She had rejected me. I whispered to the canvas, my voice surprisingly steady this time. You're not the one who's worthless, and neither am I. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even try. I just sat in my old rocking chair in the living room, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, the house dark except for the faint yellow glow of the porch light leaking through the curtains. It was strange how quiet pain could be, how it didn't always scream and thrash. Sometimes it just sat beside you, breathing in sync, waiting patiently for you to acknowledge its presence. I kept hearing her voice in my head, over and over. She always melts with that family crap. I thought of all the times I had melted. When Lauren slammed doors and called me overbearing, I let it go. When Madison started visiting less and less, I convinced myself she was just busy with her teenage life. When I was forgotten on holidays, I baked cookies and dropped them off anyway, hoping for a smile. I melted because love made me soft, because I believed in forgiveness, in loyalty, in second chances. But now I saw it for what it was, a survival tactic. I had spent a lifetime sacrificing pieces of myself bit by bit so no one would leave. I gave until there was nothing left. And then somehow I gave more. And for what? So my granddaughter could laugh behind my back? So I could be manipulated into handing over my life savings like some gullible, lonely old woman? I felt rage that night. Not a loud, destructive rage, but a quiet, focused kind of rage. The kind that sharpens you, that peels the wool from your eyes and shows you exactly who you've become, and more importantly, who you're done being. Around 3 a.m., I got up, walked to the painting she called cheap, and stood in front of it for a long, long time. The memories on that canvas no longer hurt. They weren't bruises anymore. They were proof. Proof that I had loved, that I had given my best, that I had been real even when they weren't. I whispered, "You're not going into a closet, not anymore." And I meant it. This ends today. I turned to my bookshelf, pulled out an old camera I hadn't used in years, and took a picture of the painting. Then I sat down at my desk, turned on my computer, and started to type. I found an online group for older women artists, a quiet corner of the internet where people posted their work, shared their stories, and encouraged each other. My fingers trembled slightly, but I uploaded the photo. In the caption box, I wrote, "This painting was called cheap by someone I love, but it was painted with everything I had left. Every brushstroke is a memory, every color, a piece of my heart. Maybe it's not enough for some people, but it was everything to me." I hit post. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few likes, a kind comment or two. But it wasn't about attention. It was about finally using my voice, not just my brushes, to tell my truth. I left the computer on and went back to the living room, made tea, sat in the quiet, and for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt awake. When I woke up the next morning, the sun was already filtering through the curtains, casting long golden lines across the floor. My tea from the night before sat cold on the end table, untouched. I stretched, my body stiff, but strangely energized, like something profound inside me had shifted. I shuffled over to the computer, still not expecting much. Then I saw it. The screen was glowing with notifications, likes, comments, shares. I blinked, thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me. The painting I posted, that painting had caught fire overnight. Not just a spark of sympathy. No, people were seeing it. Really seeing it. I clicked into the comments. This made me cry. There's so much emotion here. Whoever called this cheap doesn't know what love is. Do you sell prints? I want this hanging in my home. Please tell me you're exhibiting somewhere." My heart started to pound. I felt flushed, almost dizzy. I scrolled further. Messages had started pouring in. Direct messages from strangers, women mostly. Women who were mothers, grandmothers, daughters. Women who said they saw themselves in my story, that they'd been called too sentimental, too giving, too soft. But this painting, they said, it was power. And then one message stood out. "Hi, Helen. My name is Dana. I'm a curator for a small gallery in Brooklyn. Your piece stopped me cold. Would you consider exhibiting it? We'd be honored." I read the message 3 times, my hands shaking. Brooklyn? A gallery? I looked back at the painting, still leaning quietly against the wall near the dining room, half in shadow. The swing, the dog, the daffodils, my memories now made public. My hurt somehow was being turned into something beautiful. I typed back with trembling fingers. Yes, I'd be honored too. Within hours, more messages arrived. Art magazines, influencers, a woman from a major online platform asking if I would do a feature story. It was like I had thrown a tiny stone into a still lake and somehow triggered a tidal wave. Later that afternoon, Dana, the curator from Brooklyn, called me. She said she wanted to fly in to pick up the painting herself. "I want to treat this piece with the care it deserves," she told me, her voice warm and genuine. "It's not just art, Helen. It's a story people need to hear." She asked about the title. I hesitated for only a moment, then a small smile touched my lips. "Call it The Rejected Gift." Dana paused, then said, "Perfect." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and just let it all wash over me. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even really about Madison anymore. This was about me, reclaiming the parts of myself I had given away too freely for too long. It was about taking what they had dismissed and turning it into something untouchable, something valuable. That night, I didn't just sleep. I dreamed of color, of light, of finally being seen. 2 weeks later, I stood in the middle of a sunlit gallery in Brooklyn. My hands were shaking, but it was a different kind of shaking now. Excitement, disbelief. People moved around me, murmuring, studying my work, pausing for longer than I ever thought anyone would. My painting hung on a clean white wall, framed simply, lit softly. It looked powerful, not because of any fancy technique or trendy style, but because of the story behind it. My story. The Rejected Gift by Helen Carter, the little placard read. I must have stared at that small sign for 5 full minutes. Dana came up beside me, a proud smile on her face. "We had over 300 people at the opening last night," she whispered. "It's the most attention we've gotten all season." I blinked, completely stunned. She smiled. "And there's more." She led me to her office in the back, a quiet little space filled with sketches and portfolios. On her desk was a printed email. A private collector in Manhattan wanted to buy the piece for $20,000. Cash. I stared at the number. It didn't feel real. Dana watched my expression. "You don't have to sell it," she said softly. "But if you do, this could fund a new studio, travel, materials, whatever you want. You've got something rare, Helen. Voice and heart." My lips trembled. For so long I had thought my voice didn't matter, that my heart, with all its capacity to love and hurt, was a burden, that all I was a vessel for other people's dreams. But here, now, my pain had value. My truth had worth. I nodded, a sense of certainty settling over me. Tell him yes. We sealed the deal that day. I signed my first artist's contract, my hand barely steady enough to hold the pen. Dana insisted on taking a photo of me in front of the painting before it left the gallery. "Smile like you mean it," she said. And I did. For the first time in what felt like years, I really truly meant it. Back home in Vermont, things were different. Lauren called once, out of the blue, just to say she'd heard my painting was getting some attention. There was no apology, no congratulations, just a cool curiosity. I didn't give her many details. And then Madison showed up. She hadn't called, just knocked on the door one afternoon. She had a tired expression, and her eyes were glossed with unshed tears. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice small. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat at the same kitchen table where she used to eat cereal in her pajamas, where I'd once helped her build science projects out of cardboard and glue, where she used to tell me I was her favorite person in the whole world. She folded her hands and looked at me with that familiar face, the one I'd watched grow for 18 years. "I saw the painting," she said. "Online. People are talking about you. About it." I said nothing. She hesitated. I wanted to say sorry again. I just raised my eyebrows. For the birthday party, for that, and for everything else. Still, I said nothing. She looked down, her hands fidgeting in her lap. She wasn't crying, just waiting. "I messed up, Nana. I was stupid and selfish. I took you for granted. But I want to fix things." I leaned back in my chair, my arms folded across my chest. "What do you mean, fix things?" "I mean," she swallowed, "I still want to go to Cal Arts, and maybe, if things are different now, maybe you could—" There it was. The truth, bleeding through the apology, still chasing the money, still chasing me. But this time I wasn't chasing back. I stood up. She looked up at me, confused. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply said, "You called my love cheap. You pretended to care because you thought I'd fund your dream again. You treated me like a transaction." Her mouth opened, but I held up my hand. "You lost something that day, Madison. Not just money. You lost the one person who believed in you no matter what." I walked to the door and opened it. "You want something from me again? Earn it?" She stood slowly, her lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Pride wounded. I didn't expect a hug. I didn't get one. She left without another word. I watched her walk down the porch steps, back to her car, back to whatever story she'd built to convince herself she deserved it all. And I went back inside. Alone. But finally, wonderfully whole. A week passed after Madison walked out of my house. I didn't hear from her. Not a text, not a call. And you know what? I didn't expect to. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. It felt clean, like a space being cleared for something better. Then one morning, while I was sipping coffee on the porch, Lauren showed up. She didn't even knock, just barged in like it was still years ago and I was watching Madison after daycare. Her heels clicked angrily against the wood floors. Her hair was perfect, her blazer stiff, and her expression sharp. "I just came from Madison's," she said. No hello. I took another sip of coffee, waited. "She's crying. She says you humiliated her, that you made her feel like trash, that you're throwing her away over a painting." I said nothing. "She told me about the money, about the college fund. She said you took it back without warning." Still, I stayed quiet. I let her talk. Lauren threw her hands up. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? You're sacrificing her future. You're punishing her for being young and stupid, for making one bad joke at a party." At that, I stood slowly. I walked to the counter, picked up the thick folder labeled College Fund Madison, and held it up. "This," I said, my voice calm but firm, "is 12 years of my life. Every coupon clipped, every doctor visit skipped. Every winter I kept the heat so low I shivered just to save $50. This folder is my sacrifices." And she spat on it. She was upset. "No," I interrupted, my voice cutting through hers. "She was cruel, and then she came back and played nice to get it back. She didn't apologize, Lauren. She performed, and I almost fell for it." Lauren crossed her arms, her face a mask of indignation. "So what now? You just let her dreams fall apart?" I looked her straight in the eye. "She's 18, Lauren. She's not 5. If her dreams are real, she'll fight for them. She'll work for them. She won't try to manipulate a lonely old woman who loves her." Lauren's face flushed, a mixture of guilt and anger I couldn't quite tell. I raised you better than this, I said softly, and I raised her better. But somewhere along the way, you both learned how to take and forgot how to give back. Lauren looked away. I walked to my desk, pulled out a new folder, and set it down on the table. This one was labeled in fresh black marker, Fondo de Libertad, Helen Carter. Freedom Fund. I'm using the money now, I said. Not on anyone else, on me. She stared at it, her mouth slightly open, but no sound came out. I gave you both decades, I said, my voice even. Now I'm taking a few years back for myself. Lauren finally whispered, You really won't pay for CalArts? No, I said without a trace of hesitation. I already paid in full, with everything I had, and you both threw it away. She left in silence, and I poured myself another cup of coffee. My hands didn't shake this time. They say when one door closes, another opens. But sometimes it's not about doors at all. Sometimes it's about the walls crumbling down so you can finally see the sky. A few days after Lauren stormed out, I received an email from an editor at the New York Chronicle. She'd read about the gallery exhibition, seen my painting online, and wanted to feature me in a piece titled Late Bloomers, Women Who Found Their Voice After 60. I actually laughed when I saw the subject line. Late bloomer? Maybe. Or maybe I'd always had something to say. I'd just been talked over too many times to hear myself. The interview was over the phone. The editor was warm, curious, and incredibly kind. She asked about the painting, the meaning behind it, my journey as an artist. I told her everything. Well, not about Madison by name. I wasn't there to expose anyone, just to tell my truth. My painting was dismissed, I said, not because it lacked value, but because the person it was meant for didn't recognize love when it was right in front of her. She was quiet for a moment before responding. That's going to resonate with a lot of people, Helen. The article went live 2 days later. It exploded. Messages poured in from women all across the country, grandmothers, mothers, even young women who said they saw their own futures in my past and wanted to change direction before it was too late. I was invited to speak at a virtual conference for women over 50. A publishing company emailed about a possible memoir. My email inbox became a garden of courage and confessions from strangers who felt like sisters. And then came the call. Paris. An art collective that worked with female artists from around the world wanted to feature The Rejected Gift in a traveling exhibit across Europe. They would fly me out, cover everything. Your story is exactly what this world needs right now, the woman on the line said, her French accent soft and reverent. After I hung up, I sat still for a long, long time. I wasn't just seen anymore, I was being heard. And not for being someone's mother or grandmother, for being Helen. That night, I walked into my studio and pulled out a blank canvas. I didn't paint Madison. I didn't paint the swing, or Max, or the daffodils. I painted a woman standing at the edge of a cliff, arms stretched wide, wind in her hair, looking out over a vast, open horizon with no fear in her eyes. I titled it Freedom. I hung it in the hallway, right where the college fund folder used to be. Because this life, this peace, this power, was the education I had been denied. But I earned it anyway, brushstroke by brushstroke, breath by breath. The world doesn't always make sense. It doesn't always reward the good people, the kind people, the people who give everything they have to others. I used to believe that. I used to believe in fairness, in the idea that if you did enough for others, something good would come back to you eventually. But that wasn't true. At least, it hadn't been for me. Not until now. Paris was a dream. I walked into that gallery on the Seine feeling like a different person, like someone who had never known rejection, never known the sting of silence. The city, the lights, the people, all of it was so much brighter, so much more vibrant than I had ever imagined. The other artists there were young, beautiful, energetic. They had the kind of futures I used to dream about for myself a lifetime ago. But that wasn't the life I wanted anymore. I didn't need bright lights to tell me I was worthy. I was worthy in my own right. And when my painting was finally revealed to the audience that evening, I watched them. They stopped. They stared, silent. Some even teared up. Others stood unmoving, as if they were trying to absorb every drop of emotion I had poured onto that canvas. I wasn't just showing my art to them. I was showing me. I had never known how much it could ache, in a good way, to finally be seen, to finally be recognized for something I had always given so freely. The love, the sacrifice, the pieces of myself I had buried so others could rise. But when I walked into that gallery, no one expected me to be anything but myself. Later, as I stood by my painting, the very same one Madison had mocked, I received more offers, more invitations. A major gallery in London wanted to feature my work. A woman from an art collection in Australia said she wanted to include my pieces in an exhibit on female empowerment. I was invited to speak at more events, to share my story, to share my art. The emails flooded in. The calls came nonstop, and in each one I heard something new, something validating. Your story matters. Your voice is important. But none of it, absolutely none of it, mattered as much as the next moment. One evening after the show in Paris, I walked along the river, the city lights twinkling like fallen stars in the distance. It felt surreal, like a dream I never thought I could touch. I sat down at a small, quiet cafe, alone. A small glass of wine in front of me, a slice of good bread on the table. The world seemed so vast, and yet I was no longer small. I was no longer the quiet woman in the background, blending into the shadows. I was Helen Carter, an artist, a creator, a woman who finally, deeply understood her own worth. And in the stillness, as the night settled around me, I finally felt at peace. I hadn't just broken free from Madison, from Lauren, from the world that had made me feel invisible for so long. I had broken free from myself, the self that thought she wasn't enough, the self that had let everyone else take and take. I realized with a clarity that was breathtaking that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. When I flew back to Vermont, everything felt different. The house itself felt like a new place, lighter, brighter. I began working on a series of new paintings. Each one reflected the growth I had experienced, the emotional healing that had taken place. I painted women, but not just the soft, nurturing versions I'd always been. These women were strong, bold, fierce. Some were standing tall in front of majestic mountains. Others had their arms raised to the sky, completely unafraid to be seen. I was no longer the woman who stayed quiet, who allowed herself to be forgotten. I wasn't invisible anymore, and neither was my art. But the true gift, the real freedom, it came when I took my place in this world without hesitation, without apology. I was finally the woman I had always been meant to be. And that, I realized, was priceless. I had been back from Paris for a few weeks, and everything had changed. Not just in the world around me, but profoundly within myself. The emails still flooded in, the offers kept coming. Art collectors, galleries, press outlets, all asking for a piece of me, of my story, of my art. It was surreal. And yet, somehow it all felt so right. But I didn't chase the fame. I didn't chase the recognition. What mattered now wasn't the applause or the money. It was the quiet moments I got to spend in my own skin, unburdened, unapologetic, and finally truly at peace. One evening, I stood on the porch of my home in Vermont, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The landscape stretched out in front of me, fields, trees, the small creek running through the property. The wind carried the scent of pine, and the world felt alive. Alive in a way it hadn't in years. I had no idea where Madison was now. I had stopped asking. Lauren hadn't called. Maybe they were still angry. Maybe they were still upset that I wasn't the woman I used to be, the one who gave everything without question, without ever asking for anything in return. But that woman was gone, and in her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth. I painted every day now. I didn't think about Madison anymore when I picked up my brush. I thought about what came next. I painted women with open arms, standing tall, gazing into the unknown with no fear in their eyes. And when I finished those paintings, I didn't just display them in my studio. I shared them with the world. They spoke to the hearts of women who, like me, had been silenced or overlooked. Women who had lived their lives in the shadows of others, who had been told that their love wasn't enough. That was the moment I realized what had truly happened. I had given my heart away for years, without realizing I was the one who needed to be seen. Then, the most unexpected thing happened. I received a letter in the mail, a small envelope with a simple return address, Madison's name written in careful, familiar script. My chest tightened as I tore it open. I didn't know what to expect. I hadn't heard from her in months. The letter was short. "Nana," it began, "I can't undo the hurt I caused you, and I'm not asking for anything. I've been working on myself, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I do want to say I'm sorry. I've been selfish, and I deeply regret how I treated you. I hope one day you'll see me differently. Love, Madison." I read it twice, the words sinking in slowly. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. I had let go of the pain, of the expectations, of the years of trying to hold on to something that was never meant for me to carry. I took the letter, folded it carefully, and placed it in the drawer with the old college fund folder that had once consumed my life. The money was gone, but the weight was gone too, and with it, any need for validation from anyone but myself. I spent the next few months traveling. I went to Europe again, this time to places I'd only ever dreamed of visiting. I saw new things, met new people, and found beauty in everything. I laughed more, I loved more, and I painted with a freedom I had never known. One afternoon, as I wandered through an art market in Spain, I met a man, a kind man. His name was Thomas. He was an artist, too, a little older than me, with a gentle soul and a deep appreciation for life's small, beautiful moments. We talked for hours, about art, about loss, about love. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people talking openly, honestly. We saw each other a few more times during my trip. We talked about the lives we had lived and the ones we wanted to live now. He wasn't looking for someone to complete him, and neither was I. But together, we found something that felt real, a quiet companionship. It wasn't about filling a void. It was about creating something beautiful from what was already there. And when we parted, I didn't feel lonely. Not anymore. Because I knew deep down that I had everything I needed, not in anyone else, but in myself. Back in Vermont, I stood in front of a canvas I had been working on for months. It was a portrait of a woman. Older, yes, but with an undeniable strength in her eyes. Her arms were stretched wide, as if embracing the world, fully alive, fully present. There were no restrictions on her, no shame, no guilt, just peace. I titled it Freedom, because that's what I had finally found. It was mine, all of it. And it was priceless. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.